Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, today I wanted to talk to you about a subject that's really close to my heart. It's a subject that most of my clients struggle terribly with, and it's how you cost and you price your products. Now, let me introduce myself for those that don't know me. So I started life as a craft author, and as you can see, I've written about, I've lost count. It's about 32 books on textile craft, soap making, skincare, anything, all to do with products that you make yourself. Now, from there, I taught myself to knit, and I started a designer knitwear company showing at the British Designer Show. And at one point, I was employing around 600 knitters and selling to stores, prestige stores in the UK and the States. And then when I got bored with that and I discovered soap making, I started a handmade soap company from my kitchen, and I was living in Wales at the time. And it ended up as the biggest handmade soap company in the UK, supplying all the supermarkets. So I wanted to tell you that so that you understand that I do know a bit about craft, and I do know a bit about that feeling when you're making something yourself and you need to price it and make a commercial proposition so you can build a business out of it. Now, these days, I coach individuals, entrepreneurs, particularly in the skincare and soap world, people that are really serious about wanting to build a solid business. And I take them really on the journey that I took myself, which was from kitchen sink right through to international distribution. But today we're going to talk about costing. So who is this for? Now, this workshop is for anyone who makes and sells product themselves. So soap makers, jewellery, pottery, woodworkers, dressmakers, leather workers, cake makers, all of you guys will benefit from this. Who it is not for is service providers or people who are selling online services, because this is about real physical product. Now, it will probably surprise you to know that when I started my business, numbers absolutely terrified me. I was a creative. I mean, who told me I had to know all this stuff? And I know from the passionate entrepreneurs that I've worked with, and particularly the creatives, that numbers and business management are often not their thing. But the point is, what I discovered quite early on in my business that there was a spreadsheet that I could use that was going to totally empower me and teach me how to understand the numbers in my business. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about that later. But that's me. Now, the truth is that there's no reason why you should know this stuff. If you're an artist or a craftsperson, why should you know about the numbers? But actually, if you look at them in the way that I'm going to show you, they are really easy to grasp. And they're really important to grasp, because the fact is that if your business is not making a profit, you're just funding a very expensive hobby. And I suspect that a number of you already have that feeling already. So let's get you out of that. So here are the four most important things that you need to consider when you're costing and pricing your products. So the first thing you've got to look at is, who do you want to sell to? Who is your product aimed at? Now, how you value yourself, how you value your skill will to some way dictate that. But it might be that you're making clay jewelry that will be in the budget of a lot of people. It might be that you're producing one-off pieces of art that should be and need to be really expensive to justify the time you're spending on them. But it's really important for you to stop and think about exactly who it is you want to reach, and maybe do a little profile on them. Think about where they shop, what they spend on items, what their bathrooms or their kitchens look like. Just do yourself a little profile of the ideal person that you want to sell to. Now, the second thing that you've got to consider is how you're going to reach them. And it might be that you're selling your goods at craft markets or on Etsy or via an internet shop. But the point is that if you want to scale your business and you want to make it serious and earn a serious living from it, what you need to do right at the beginning is set yourself up and set your prices, do your costing and set your prices at a level which will allow you to have enough margin so that when that really important buyer comes along to your craft stall and says, oh, I would really like to sell those products in my shop, you've got enough margin to give them. So that is kind of really important. And the next thing you've got to consider, and I'm sure that you've looked quite closely at this already, is what are your products costing you? But your products are not just about that lump of clay or those precious stones or that coconut oil that you bought. It's also about the labor that you put into them, because labor is not free. And a lot of people, a lot of makers take hours and hours to make their products, and they're very shy when it comes to charging what those hours are worth. So we're going to take a deeper look at that as well. The fourth element of your decision making is who are you competing with? So it's great to look at your competitors and be able to come up with a price around where they are, or slightly higher or slightly lower, whatever you want to do. But it's good to know who your competition is. So I mentioned earlier this spreadsheet, and this is a spreadsheet that my accountants created for me when they realized I was totally hopeless. I mean, at one point, I have to tell you, my investors actually said, I think we need to get someone in to manage this business, because whilst I was really good at coming up with ideas and at creating products, and I was even good at selling them, I really didn't have a grip of the numbers. And having a grip of the numbers puts you in control of your business rather than having your business in control of you. So they came up with this spreadsheet for me, which I am going to offer to sell you a little later on. Of course, this is a webinar. But honestly, this was the most useful tool that I could possibly have in my business. Okay, so what you need to understand when you're coming up with your costs is that there are two types of costs in any business. And the first is your fixed costs. So your fixed costs are any costs that you can directly attribute to your product. So that would be your ingredients, your materials, your packaging, and the time a single product takes to make. Because you can look at those and you can analyze, even if you're making big batches of products, you can work back and know exactly what your product is costing you at that level. Now, what you can't do and what you shouldn't include when you're producing your costing is looking at your variable costs. Now, your variable costs are your heat, your light, your rent, your marketing, your admin costs, your management costs, travel, all these costs. Now, these have to come out of your gross profit. And the reason that we can't include them is because, let's take, for example, electricity. So you may have a light bulb burning in your workshop, and under that light bulb, you might spend all day making one product, or you might make a batch of 100 products. So there is no way to attribute the cost of that, running that light bulb, to just one product. Okay, so the same with a secretary or admin. You might type an invoice for one product, or you might type an invoice for 1 million products. Now, the invoice and what you're paying your admin person is the same either way. So you can't attribute it directly to a product. So all these variable costs have to come out of your gross margin, which is why it's really, really important that your gross margin is big enough to cover this sort of expenditure. Okay, so when costing your products, actually fixing a price on your products, only your fixed costs should be taken into account. Your variable costs come out of your gross profit. Now, on the spreadsheet, what I actually give you is I give you a page where you can work out the cost of ingredients and material, and you can work out how long it takes to make your product, and then you can see exactly what a single product is costing you. But when you're starting out, the chances are that you're going to be buying your ingredients, materials, whatever, in very small quantities. And you could be paying considerably more buying like that. So when you're doing a costing spreadsheet, if it's your intention to grow and to sell to shops or to scale your business in any way, it's really a good idea to go to your suppliers and find out what it would cost you to buy a bigger batch. So if you take essential oils, for example, I remember when we started, we were buying in little 50 ml bottles. And within very soon on, we were buying in 5-litre bottles. And the difference between the prices of those two quantities were 50%. So it can be a massive saving to buy larger amounts of things. And this is also why I recommend that even if you're a wildly creative artisan, it's a really good idea to have particular products that you make in larger batches so that you can offer them at a really competitive price, because very often the bigger your batch size, the lower the prices, simply because you're buying your ingredients, etc., at a lower cost. So think about that. And for the purposes of my spreadsheet, what you should do is cost your ingredients in at the next level up to the amount that you're using. So if you're buying in 50 mils, cost it at 500 mils, as if you were buying at 500 mils. Now this, in the short term, will pinch at your profits, but it will allow you to sell at a competitive price, and that will give you a better chance of scaling your business and attracting bigger buyers. Now, the other real beef that many of the entrepreneurs I work with have is how to cost their labor. And when you are making batches of product, I mean, it really depends very much what business you're in. What you should be, and if you've got the intention of scaling your company, you're not always going to be making these products yourself. In fact, if you're running a business, you will not, your business cannot afford you to do any job that you could pay somebody else a relatively low salary to do. Your job will be the marketing, the selling, the new ideas. So what you need to do with the labor is think firstly about what elements of your making process you could realistically outsource and what you would have to pay somebody to do them for you. And that is how you work out your labor costs. So if you're an artist, for example, a celebrated artist, then your reputation, your value, that will, you simply have to think about that and think about how long a piece has taken you to make and cost that into your product at that level. But if you're making something like clay jewellery or leatherwork or soap, then you need to think about what you would pay somebody else to do it. and use that price to cost in your labor. Now, there's a very basic formula for coming to your wholesale price and your retail price. And for a baseline price, what you should do, if you haven't got my spreadsheet will work this out for you, is to add up the cost of your ingredients or materials for one product, add 77% to that total, and that will give you your wholesale price. So that would give you the price that you are selling to shops for. So it's the cost of your ingredients and labor and packaging, add 77% for your wholesale price. Okay. Now, once you've got your wholesale price, or that's an absolute baseline wholesale price. And in my experience, if you want to build a sustainable business, you cannot afford to go lower than that. You really can't, because all those other costs that we talked about earlier, all your variable costs, have to come out of that margin. So to build a sustainable business, that is the absolute minimum profit margin that you should have. But once you've got that figure, you should then consider your brand positioning, which takes us back to that question at the beginning: who are you going to sell to? Now, you should look around at other brands that are selling similar items to your target audience and look closely at their prices, and then either be slightly higher or slightly lower, depending where you want to position yourself. But it could well be that you make, for example, you're a glass blower and you make a beautiful little perfume bottle, and you know that you could get that bottle into top stores, or you feel that your reputation would allow you to put a really high price on that bottle, even though it cost you very little to make. Now, in that instant, you can up that 70% to 200%. I mean, there's no limit. The final wholesale price that you fix depends absolutely on where you want to be seen in the market. If you want to be seen as an economy brand that people can buy in bulk, then you keep your margin low. If you want to be seen as a luxury brand, or you want to show the quality of your product, then raise that figure. Your 77% is your baseline, but you can go anywhere from there. Now, once you've fixed your wholesale price, we then want to find your retail price. And to get to a retail price in today's climate, that is the price that a shop will sell your goods for, they will need to, at the minimum, double your wholesale price and then add any relevant sales tax. Now, you should never ever begrudge what a retailer is making when they're selling your products. I know a lot of people come to me and say, oh my God, I spent all this time making the product and they're going to make more than me when they sell it. And all they're doing is putting it in their shop. But really, running a shop today, retail is in huge trouble. And running a shop today with all the overheads that are involved in keeping staff and the electricity is a huge undertaking. And good business is where everybody does well. And the truth is that the more your retailer earns selling your product, the more likely they are to buy from you. And there is another issue here, and that is that you cannot, by law, fix the price that a retailer sells your products for. Okay, you can't fix the price. But what you can do is you can offer a recommended retail price to the shops that want to buy from you. So once you've got that recommended retail price, that is the price that you would sell your products for online. Because if you want to sell to shops, there's no way they're going to take your products if they know that people can go direct to your website and buy them cheaper. All right, so it's a guide, recommended retail price is a guideline price, but it's the price you should be selling for online, and it's the price that you suggest to stores that they sell your products for. Now, if you only plan to sell online, and you may start out that way, but that could change, and that's why I really, really like to see people going through this exercise and building in wholesale margins. But if you sell online, then you're going to be making a much bigger profit. So it's a really good idea when you're selling to have various streams of income. So you will have the income that you get from larger orders where you're getting shops to order from you. And you've got the direct income when you're selling one-to-one to customers, and you can charge more when you do that. So it really is a win-win situation. And the other issue with pricing is that it's really, really easy to bring your prices down, but it is very, very hard to put them up, okay, especially if you're supplying shops. So it's a great idea to get this right at the beginning, so that you've got all the possible risks covered. You know exactly what your item is costing you. You can alter the price, or you can see how any changes in the economy, like an ingredient or a material goes up or transport goes up, how that is going to affect your profit. So it really does put you in control of your business if you go through this exercise of costing. Now, I am absolutely sure, I am 100% sure that many of you will go through this exercise and you'll look at the real costs of your product and the real profit margins that you have to add on to make you sustainable. And the first thing you will say is, nobody will pay those prices. I can't do this. I've got to keep my prices down. Nobody will pay my prices. And the temptation then is to go on and reduce your prices. And then you could end up like I did. And that was a year into my business, having a really, really healthy order book, having worked 12-hour days, incredibly hard, and found that at the end of that year, I'd made enough to get, I would have earned more taking a cleaning job. And that's a fact, until I actually accepted the value of what I was selling and fixed a price on it that would allow me to build a sustainable business. I was just a hamster on a wheel, and I don't want you to be. So don't be tempted to knock your prices down. And the other thing that I would say is this is also where your brand positioning comes in, and understanding the value of your product. Because the truth is that people do not buy a beautiful piece of jewelry or a beautiful cosmetic cream because it's cheap. They buy it because it's beautiful, or because they can see that it's going to do them good, or that it's going to solve a problem for them. Nobody goes out to buy something just because it's cheap. Okay, now that's a fact. And very often the type of things that we're making fall into the relative luxury market anyway, because nobody needs a leather bag to survive, or nobody needs a beautiful face cream to survive. If you're in that position where you've got to feed a family and you haven't got the income to cover your rent, our products are probably the last products that people are going to be looking for. So most handmade products are aimed at people with some level of disposable income. And then it is actually your customer's business what they will pay for a product. It's not your business. Your business is to value your product at a price that covers your overheads and gives you a sustainable profit, and reflects the true value of your creativity or what you're doing. So don't be frightened of pricing. I mean, we can go into a whole other thing here, which would fall under my coaching about getting you mindset ready to run a business properly. But for the purpose of a costing spreadsheet, the figures don't lie. Okay. Now, if you find that your base price is too high, what you need to do is you need to revisit the ingredients or materials that you've used in your product and in your packaging, and look at how you could either minimize them or reduce them or find alternatives for them that bring the price down. Or you could negotiate with your suppliers to reduce your buying price. You could also buy in larger quantities as part of that negotiation. So once you find what your best-selling lines are, stick to those and reduce and buy more materials to make those, rather than doing a lot of individual items that you need new materials for that do not sell that well. And the other thing you need to look at is to refine your production methods. So very often, we know that first item takes a very long time because we're learning while we're making it. But once you've got it, you can look at how many pieces of fabric you can cut at one time, how many kilos of soap you can make at one time, so that you reduce your labor cost. And your labor cost is a big, big element in any handmade product. So this will allow you to see, certainly the spreadsheet allows you to see immediately exactly what you're spending too much money on. And I think I've covered making in larger quantities. The larger quantities you can afford to make in, the lower your costs are. Okay. All right, so to talk about my product costing spreadsheet. Now, as I said, this was created for me by my accountants as a last hope for a hopeless entrepreneur. And it really did. It was the only thing I needed for me to take control of my business, because I could see instantly exactly what everything was costing me in terms of my time, in terms of materials, in terms of the labor that I was taking on. And I could see what I had to reduce and what I had extra margin in, where I could afford to give discounts to people, where I could afford to offer free shipping. Because as I say again, numbers don't lie. So if you've got this, this is a really simple spreadsheet. It's 2 tabs. And what it does is, firstly, it will help you. There's a sheet where you can calculate the cost of all the individual components in your product. So all the fixed costs. And the second sheet allows you to work out exactly what your wholesale price should be and what your retail price should be. So with my method of costing, you're working absolutely from the ground up. I know that many people take a retail price and then discount it, and that is not accurate enough to give you any sense of control. This makes you totally focus on the detail around your costing. It's almost a time and motion study, but you only have to do it once. So it's set out in such a way that if one ingredient cost changes, you can tweak it in your costing, on your costing spreadsheet, and it will take you right through to show how that affects your profit. It will also determine for you what you should be selling to stores for and what your final retail price should be. And it helps you, there's a special chart in there, which is a perceptual branding chart, which will help you to see where your brand is positioned on the market. So what sort of customer base you're looking for, who you've got as your competition. So it's only a simple template, but it's a great method of finding where you fit in the market and therefore what you can charge. So this package that I'm offering you includes an interactive 2-page spreadsheet that works on Excel and on Google Sheets. And also, it doesn't matter what currency you're using, you can adjust the currency. It hasn't got a million bells and whistles because you don't need them. And I often find that when I buy a complicated accounts package or something like that, half of it I don't understand. And this is totally understandable. And I'm also giving you a 30-minute instructional video where I sit on your shoulder and we go through it column by column as you fill it in. Okay, so it's not magic. You've got to have a file with your invoices in. You need to look at what you're actually paying for your materials, and you need to work out what you're going to pay for your labor. But you only have to do this once. So it's a really great feeling when you've done it and you understand that you actually got real grips of your on your business. Interestingly, I put this up on Instagram quite recently, and I had a client back saying, I'm working on it today. My God, it's an eye-opener. And it really is. It's a no-nonsense. This is what it's costing you. Okay. It's also, for those that can't be bothered with my instructional video, it's got full instructions in PDF format. And it's also got the perceptual branding template to help you with your brand positioning. And here's where to get it. Do take a look. You'll see the price in there. It is not very expensive. To give you some idea, I asked my private business group, I described it to them and asked what I should charge for it. And they came up with a price that is double than the one that I've decided to sell it for, because I want as many people to get this as possible. I've been a craft worker all my life, or I've been making and selling products all my adult life, and I know how valuable that is. So do take a look. I hope that was helpful to you. Bye.